In this video, we're going to compare Volkswagen Atlas to the Mazda CX-90. We're going to compare the designs, obviously, and also the spec and tech. And then I'm going to let you know which one I would buy of these two cars. So it's the battle of the two of the newest three-row SUVs that we're going to have a look at today. So let's start with some of the spec and tech for the Mazda CX-90. It introduces a new turbocharged 3.3-liter inline-six engine, making either 280 or 340 horsepower, which is pretty decent for this type of package, depending on which trim level you go with, if you go with a premium S model or not. And it also comes with a 323 horsepower plug-in hybrid option. Fuel economy comes in at 24 mpg city and 28 mpg highway, which is not bad for these proportions, and the powertrain, you do after all have 340 horsepower at your disposal in the CX-90. There's no specific fuel economy numbers for the plug-in hybrid just yet, but it will be more efficient and also offer around 30 miles of pure electric drive. Not bad for your daily commutes. In the interior, you have either a 10.3 or an optional 12.3-inch infotainment display with a 7 or optional 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster, surrounded by a stunning environment made up of high-quality fabrics and soft Nappa leather. Pricing for the CX-30 starts at just over $40,000 for the base select trim level, which also comes with all-wheel drive as standard. And it tops out with the S Premium Plus at just over $61,000. But recently I saw a spec of the CX-90 that was about $65,000, so I guess you can spec it to higher than the top of the line that we have right here. Now the Atlas, it only comes with one single powertrain option, and that is a 269 horsepower, 273 pound-feet of torque turbocharged inline 4, which is connected to an 8-speed automatic transmission. So there is no more V6 for 2024. Front-wheel drive is standard, but of course you can get all-wheel drive as an option. I would personally go for the blacked out R-line trim, which also gives a more aggressive bumper, and of course you get the gorgeous 21-inch wheels as well. There are no updated fuel economy numbers for the 2024 Atlas. However, the previous model was rated at 21 mpg city and 25 highway. Pricing for the 2024 Atlas start at $38,000, which is $3,000 less than the CX-90 for the base model, and it goes up to $55,000 for the top of the line SEL Premium R-Line Atlas. Let's jump into Photoshop and let's have a look at these two designs, because they are completely different when it comes to design philosophy and specifically surface treatment. So let's have a look at these. We have the CX-90 up here in some pretty cool white color, and then the new Atlas down here in this burgundy red. Let's start with the CX-90. I like the front end of Mazdas these days. They have a pretty traditional looking layout with the headlights and then going into the grille like this, with nothing crazy going on in the Mazda designs recently, and I think that's a good thing. However, the thing I have, I don't really like with the CX-90 is the headlight, because it feels, to me, when I look at this headlight, it feels like it's being pushed in by this trim piece, kind of squished into this corner. I want to have the headlight stretch out and have more space to do its thing and to be designed and have a bigger headlight, and not just have it be like this, where it looks almost like just a square in the very end point high top corners of the front end. But at the same time, we do have this daytime running light LED that almost emphasizes this, what I'm talking about, that it kind of crushes or squishes the headlight into the corner, kind of just pushing it in there. But other than that little detail, I think this is a handsome looking front end of the CX-90. I do like these intakes that we have, that we don't have any plastic trim pieces surrounding it, which is totally unnecessary. Instead, just having it be a cut in the surfacing of the body without any extra additional trim pieces. Not a huge fan of the chrome down here. I would probably have this blacked out, and I would maybe want to black out the grille as well. Maybe it comes with an option for that, or a trim level from Mazda. I'm not really sure. Looking at the new Atlas, I just made a video on this and how much I prefer this facelift over the previous pre-facelift Atlas. I think this has a very clean identity. Now we have a light bar in the middle, which looks really good. The headlights gain mass, or the gain surface. Feels like it's a higher sitting headlight, and we also have a very simple daytime running light in this design, creating a super strong identity for the new Atlas. It's simplified, and I think that's what a lot of automakers do today. They simplify their designs. They got to a point where everything was pretty much over stylized, and they figured out we need to focus more on our identity, and doing that by simplifying the design. And then we have this R-line bumper in the bottom, which I think looks really good as well, following the line of the grille and creating this more aggressive look in the front end. Very well done from both of these cars. But when we go into the side view, this is where you can clearly see the two different philosophies of these two brands. The Mazda, look at this, how clean this is in its design. There's no sharp lines or creases anywhere in the body of this car. Is very fluid, and I think that's beautiful design language by Mazda. I'm a huge fan of their surface treatment, and also that we have some waviness going on in the middle of the car. If you look at this from specific angles, you can see the shading almost doing a dance in the side of this of the surfacing of these new Mazdas, which I think is really cool. The proportions look great as well, a bit rounded. We have a pretty steep angle in the rear end, and then almost a vertical front and rear to have it be properly framed by two vertical endpoints or lines in the front and in the rear. One detail that is almost a little bit annoying, but at the same time that I really like on this Mazda, look at the trim details in this design, specifically here in the side view. Everything is super clean. There is nothing unnecessary going on, except for one little detail. If we zoom in right here, you can see that we have something weird going on here, and I'm not sure why Mazda decided to put that piece in there. It's one of these pieces that I just want to have it be a clear connection between this trim piece and this trim piece, but instead they created this little detail there that is, you know, artful, I would call it. It's a piece of art, because art is supposed to invoke a feeling, and this little piece definitely invokes a feeling on me when I see it, and I think that's a good reason enough for having it still be in there, to kind of break up all the perfect graphics and surfaces that we have in the Mazda. So looking at the Atlas and compare these two, we have a lot of sharp lines going on here. We have these shoulder lines and the very curvy and wavy line that goes above the fenders like this, or above the axles, kind of emphasizing the all-wheel drive function, which I think looks really good. And we also have a very strong sharp line at the lower part right here, creating this shelf at the bottom. And in addition, this feels like it's a bit more off-roady, because we have the plastic cladding going around the wheel arches, creating almost a bigger hole for the tire to sit in visually. Although I think in this case I like both of these, because they have two different functions when it comes to visual design, and that is that this feels more luxurious having these body painted, and it also feels more luxurious because these are rounded, the fenders are rounded, the wheel wells are rounded, while here they're more squarish, adding to this more off-road looking feel of the Atlas. And I also like both of these wheels. I think this is a 21-inch as well, and these are also 21-inch wheels straight from the factory, looking pretty good for factory wheels. Looking at the rear end, here you can see a bit of a bubbliness in the CX-90. It feels like it's protruding maybe a bit far in this angle right here, and then going back in, and then coming back as a bumper, sticking out a little further at the bottom. But super clean design. There's nothing crazy going on here, just like we have in the front. The only crazy part is this little detail, as I talked about in the side view. Other than that, it's a very simplistic and clean, beautiful design. And you can see the surface treatment that I talked about before here a little bit better with these reflections. You have almost like a wave going like this, and then it goes back up here, because you see the reflection down here is facing upwards, which means that the curvature actually comes back up and reflecting the sky. I really like these new graphics that we have in all new Mazdas, the CR-V, the HR-V, and the Civic, and the Accord. It looks a lot cleaner than it used to be. I do miss sort of some sort of chamfers going around these details, specifically the headlights and taillights. That's a trend that's been phased out over the years. But when I look at this taillight graphics, it does give me a clear representation of what it is and a clear identity, having it go like this. I don't think I've seen any other car having a similar design to this, so it gives Mazda a clear identity in the rear end as well as in the front end. Now, looking at the Atlas, this is kind of interesting because I'm pretty sure this is the R line, but we still have a bunch of chrome going on, and then we have this chrome trim piece underneath the taillights that used to be black in the old R line. I don't know if there are several different versions of the R line. We also have chrome down here at the exhaust pipes, as you can see. And as I said in the review video of the Atlas, we now also have a big, beautiful light bar going across the rear end, emphasizing the width of this car even more. And I think that was a detail that actually suits this specific car. Sometimes it feels like manufacturers just slap on a light bar in the rear end that doesn't have any sort of connection to the taillights or anything else, just because it's trendy to do so. But here it feels like it's very well integrated in the design and also in the graphic features of the taillights themselves. We also have a bigger roof spoiler than we had before, and I think that's a good idea because it gives it a nice send-off looking at it from a side view and also adds to the sportiness of this car. Last but not least, let's have a look at these interiors. I think both of these interiors are absolutely gorgeous for what, it feels a lot more upscale than a Mazda or a Volkswagen. When I look at these, it feels like interior design has stepped up so much the last decade that it almost feels like premium brands, every single interior these days. But what I love about both of these is obviously that we have the housing for the gauge cluster, even though the gauge cluster itself is digital in both of these. And I love the fact that they decided to not just put a screen going across the entire dash like this, instead separating the gauge cluster from the infotainment system. I think Volkswagen did the better job of integrating the infotainment system by having this trim piece coming back and being kind of cut off by this piece, but it still has a connection both up here and down here, so it creates a continuity in the interior design. While as Mazda up here, it does feel like it's pretty well integrated. I would say this display, it has some base for it to sit within and almost like a folder to sit in, but it's not as well integrated in my opinion as the infotainment screen that we have on the Atlas. So which one of these would I personally buy? Well, the thing is, you only get a 4-cylinder with 269 horsepower in the Atlas, while in the CX-90 it goes up to 340 horsepower, in addition to the plug-in hybrid with 323 horsepower. Even though it is a little bit more expensive, in this case, I think I would actually go with the Mazda CX-90.